Of course, the pandemic made the Pac-12 schedule a battle during 2020, but USC made it through the spring schedule of 2021 unscathed and successful. We've got Matt Lowry on the line from the Conquest Chronicles on SB Nation to help us break it down. Matt, we appreciate you stopping by as always.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And it was with the spring game, it was a thing of beauty, not because it was the spring game, but because there were fans there, and so it kind of felt close to normal, something that we haven't had in a while.
Before we move on to the analysis of the spring game and the entire session of 15 spring practices, just want to mention our condolences to the family, the friends of Chris Brown, 24 years old, former USC offensive lineman from 2014 to 18. An honorable mention, Pac-12 offensive lineman, all conference as a junior, passed away this week. Not a lot of details out there. Doesn't need to be discussed. Just wanted to honor his memory as well. Just a tragedy there at only 24 years old. All right, Matt. Looking at the spring game, everything you could possibly gather in regards to the highlights and what you saw, what stood out to you in regards to the good and the bad?
Well, there's a few things that stood out to me in regards to the to both the good and the bad. I'll start off with the good, honestly, and that was Keontae Ingram as well as Stephen Carr. Both looked amazing out there. I know it's been a question mark in terms of running back depth, as everyone knows, but anytime you have some speedsters as well as Keontae Ingram, who I think could be a real difference maker for the USC run game. How the way he looked, just breaking off runs, looked amazing in the air raid. And Stephen Carr looked like he finally looked comfortable. I don't want to say comfortable, but he looked like he's living up to that potential that we thought he would live up to his freshman year. Everyone remembers him and Ronald Jones were amazing. I want to say in 2017, and then Stephen Carr kind of took a step back with injuries, and as you know, he was dealing with injuries. And last season, I think the inconsistent play of the offensive line hurt the run game as well. But this is the best he's looked since I'd arguably say his freshman year, as well as Keontae Ingram looking like he can be a real difference maker in this USC offense if used correctly, and how the way they were able to get the ball in their hands. So I think if Keontae Ingram, and honestly, a lot of people, there were some people saying, hey, how the way he runs, so it's a reminder of how Ronald Jones ran when he was at USC. So I think those two stood out the most, and it brings a lot of promise. The emergence of some freshmen, some early enrollees, Jackson Dart, who's been who a lot of people's been high on. A lot of people have been high on him and Miller Moss, but Jackson Dart looked like he had a lot of potential, especially with his scrambling ability. That's something a lot of people don't talk about, is his mobility out of the pocket. He made a few plays where in a spring game, of course, they're going to call him a sack. But if this was an actual game, he would have been able to get out of that and make some plays. So he showed he can make some plays on his feet. And honestly, pushing for that backup spot as well, as we'll get into the QB situation here shortly. But some negatives to it, and there are some negatives that comes with the spring game. The fact that the offensive line did not look that great, and I know that's been a huge concern on a lot of people, with them bringing in Clay McGuire, who was supposed to come in and tune up this offensive line for the air raid. However, I don't know. You could say that because they had to split it, because they did split the offensive line. They did two teams, so they did split it. So that could be a factor, that could play a part. The fact that they've had limited practices in spring could also play a part. I've heard that they didn't have many practices during the spring like that. And as you know, Mark, we didn't know when spring practice was going to start up until the last second. You know, when they said like 2 days before, hey, spring practice is starting. So that could play a factor in it. I mean, you know, it takes a minute to get acclimated to something new, to a new coaching style. So that could play a part as well. But it also affected the quarterbacks. The quarterbacks didn't look as sharp. And I think mostly that comes from, you know, the amount of pressure they were getting. Um, Again, I don't know if if it means USC's defensive line is just going to be that good. Of course, when you have Drake Jackson coming and pressuring you, I mean, that's a thing too. So I don't know if it means it's that, or if the offensive line is truly struggling and they just haven't had a lot of cohesion together, which hopefully they're hoping to patch up by the time they face San Jose State in their week 1 game. But that's something that that is primarily a concern, is the offensive line. The quarterback is kind of, I think, is a product with the quarterback position. I think it was a product of that offensive line struggling in that spring game.